Hey guys, it's Kristen and Bethany here with Girl Defined Ministries, and in today's vlog, we're going to be talking about physical boundaries in a romantic relationship.
Thinking back to my relationship that I'm currently in of 6 months, congratulations to me. I think back to 6 months ago, and physical boundaries was one of those topics that we prioritized. We wanted to know where we were going, what we were doing, what our boundaries were. We didn't want to get like 3 months in and feel like, oh, we actually didn't want to do that, or this isn't really where we wanted to be in this area. So we kind of like put the brakes on and we were like, let's figure this out. And boy, was that a process. It's one of those things that you want to figure out, but then it's also kind of like difficult and confusing and stressful. And it's like, can we just not do this? I don't know. It just seems really, really hard. And so that's kind of how I felt. I remembered those conversations and just feeling like, a little bit. That's how I felt. Like that kind of it's just like, oh my goodness. And so what Dave and I decided to do is we were like, let's get some advice. Let's seek some advice. And so what we started doing was asking all sorts of people. We went out with Kristen and Zach for their great wisdom, and then other older couples, just people who had been together shorter amount of times, longer amount of times. And then we got to the end and we were like half cross-eyed because we were like, oh my goodness, everybody has just a little bit of a different opinion. Yes, everyone agrees on the biblical truths that purity is so important, saving sex for marriage, heading towards that goal of purity is important. But then when it kind of gets down to the nitty gritty, everyone has different opinions.
Like the specifics of how this works out.
The specifics of how this works out. And we kind of felt like, I literally felt like I was going to pull my hair out. But we did land in a really great place after a lot of prayer, a lot of thinking, a lot of seeking counsel. And in fact, it's interesting because now that I look back actually at our book, Love Defined, and I think about when we wrote this over a year ago, I'm looking on our chapter about boundaries and I'm like, we actually landed really similarly to what we wrote. Think of that, like I guess that makes sense. So we kind of want to share with you some of the core truths and basics of what our hearts should be thinking, our minds should be thinking when it comes to physical boundaries, kind of take off all the big stuff and narrow it down to some of the most important things that Dave and I discovered and some of the most important things that we share in our book as well.
And I remember when we went out and you were asking us all these questions and we were sharing honestly like, okay, from my relationship with Zach and our experience dating and just trying to figure out boundaries, there were so many things looking back now that I've learned. And I'm like, oh, I wish I really focused more on this or not so much on that. And so when we were sharing, we were one of those people like, you need to focus on this. This is so important. And you're like, okay, great. I'll take that advice and then on to the next one. But one of the things that I look back on, I'm like, this is the heart of it. This is the core of it. It's not so much about just like, okay, A, B, C, getting your list, making
rules,
your boundaries, like we're not going to do this, we are going to do this, and then just trying to live up to it and thinking, by following these rules, I'm automatically going to be pure.
Yes.
Because there's so much more behind it. We have motives, we have sinful hearts,
emotions,
we have
thoughts,
desires, we have temptations and lust, and all of this is happening in the relationship, and it can be so easy if you're just in it for the rules to say, oh, well, I can kind of bend this rule, or nobody's looking, so it doesn't really matter if I follow this.
So I can kind of sneak away with it.
And it becomes so much more about just following the rules technically and not really about honoring God with your heart and having the right motivations. Because really, our motivations, what we want, will fuel our actions. So if your heart isn't in the right place and what you really want is just to get what you want, then ultimately behind the scenes when no one's looking, that's what you're going to do. Those are going to be your actions. So one of the things I was sharing with you was
this is good stuff.
The heart is so important. Having a heart, first and foremost, that genuinely wants to worship Christ, glorify God above all else in the relationship, having that heart of worship is the most important thing, because that heart of worship of saying, Lord, I want to honor you in my physical boundaries. I want to pursue purity for your glory, first and foremost, whether anyone ever sees or not. So behind the scenes, when no one's looking, behind closed doors, when you're in a car riding with this person, whatever it is, your heart is to honor God and you're wanting to worship him most. And so your motivation is fueled by that love for God. So that is the thing I shared with you. And I just want to encourage you girls. I want to encourage you in, don't jump to the list. We all love rules, right? Like the Pharisees in the New Testament. We love rules. We want lists. But first and foremost, before you get the boundary list, you need to check your heart and say, where is my heart in this?
Amen.
Does my heart, do I genuinely worship Christ more than this guy, more than this relationship? Do I care about honoring him more than just getting what I want?
Yes.
Or even just doing what I want in the moment because it feels good? And I love what Psalm 42 says about this heart that desires to worship and glorify God. Psalm 42:1 says, as the deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. And verse 2, my soul thirsts for God, for the living God, then shall I come and appear before God. And just this idea of thinking of an animal longing for water, like thirsty, like it's going after the water, it's needing the water, it's pursuing the water. that sort of longing and pursuit, seeing the necessity of that, the water, the nourishment that comes from that, we view our relationship with God as the same thing. And so that's the heart that God is looking for in us. God, would my soul long for you? Would my soul pant for you first and foremost above anything else? So that is my biggest encouragement to you before you jump into the boundaries, which you're going to share some practical, helpful tips, is to evaluate your heart and make sure you're worshiping Jesus and desiring to glorify him first.
Okay, so now that we have the right heart motive and you're like, yes, God, I want to honor you, but now what? You still have to come up with boundaries. What are you going to do? What is that going to look like? And so one verse that has been really helpful in reminding us of kind of the big picture, a verse that we need to keep in mind, comes from Hebrews 13:4, which says, let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled. And so first off, it's kind of taking a step back and reminding yourself of the bigger picture. So for me in my relationship, I take a step back and I'm not just so short-sighted, nearsighted, thinking right now, what do I want in this moment? I'm taking a step back and I'm saying like, okay, the marriage bed, honoring that, not just like, don't do this, but wow, this beautiful gift within marriage, physical intimacy, this bigger picture that we get to participate in one day and enjoy. That's one thing that we are pursuing and that we can delight in one day. And that's an amazing, incredible thing. And not like, oh, I just don't get to do that. Like, wow, I get to preserve that. I get to cherish that. I get to treasure that and wait for that and save up for that. So one day I can enjoy that beautiful gift. And when you imagine yourself, and I imagine myself like, okay, and when I'm standing at the altar, when I look back on my relationship, what am I going to be thinking? What am I going to be wishing was different? And actually, in Love Defined, I don't want to say it in my own words because I feel like we say it best in the book. I'll read it to you, but it's this exact idea. It says, establishing moral boundaries in your romantic relationship is something you should do early on. Ask yourself this question. This is exactly what I was saying. When I stand at the altar on my wedding day, what regrets do I not want to have? By thinking through all the potential regrets you don't want to have, you will have a clearer picture of what you're aiming for. For example, not many Christian women get married and think, if only I had kissed more guys in my past, or too bad I didn't sleep around more, or I should have looked at more porn. No way. The majority of Christian women we've interacted with don't wish they had been less pure. They wish they had been more pure. And so when you can take a step back in your relationship, or even if you're not in a relationship, in a future relationship, and ask yourself, where am I going? What's the bigger picture? What am I striving for? You stop asking like, what can I get away with and how much can I do without crossing that line? And instead you say, how much can I preserve? How much can we save? And it really
how much can we cherish?
How much can we cherish? Yeah, and it really changes the way that you set up boundaries. So like there are certain boundaries that Dave and I have set up, like we're not kissing until we get married, specifics like that. And for us, it's not like, oh, we don't get to do this. Instead, it's like this. We get to save this for the future. When we're standing at the altar of our wedding, we get to preserve this and cherish this for that moment. So I really, when you think of your boundaries, I just want you to stop and think ahead, think of the long term. And then when you're making those boundaries, it honestly changes everything and it becomes so much more easy. And then like she said, you're satisfied in Christ because you're worshiping him. And so you're not looking to this guy saying, give me everything and make me feel amazing. You're able to worship Christ. And then when you set those boundaries, you're cherishing something further down the road. You know your goal. You know what you're working towards. And I guarantee you from my experience and just from seeing how God says, honor the marriage bed, it does make such a difference.
I think for both of us, something that we've both learned in all of this and having the right heart, pursuing boundaries, is that boundaries can actually be much more freeing than stifling, because you're able to enjoy the relationship. Your focus is on God. You're enjoying this other person, and you can enjoy the relationship without getting bogged down by all the, I can't do this, I can't do this. You're just free. Like, here's our boundaries. Here's what we can do, and you can just enjoy it. And I know you've said that it's very freeing. I felt the same way. So if you're thinking, well, I want more specifics, what are specific things that you've done? Well, every relationship's different. It's not going to be the same for every person. But in our book, Love Defined, we do give very specifics just as examples to say, in my relationship with Zach, here are like 10 really important boundaries.
You actually gave your list of what you did.
Just as an example to say, okay, if you're wondering, what does this even look like? I give a complete list inside the book in that chapter on boundaries. And then I also just want to say a quick word for any of you out there who have past sexual sin or regrets, which is all of us, right? We've all lusted. We've all sinned. We all have regrets, but sometimes we get bogged down and we wonder, how can I move past that? Can God forgive me? How can I move on? Can he redeem my future? And the short answer is yes. For all of us, that's why Christ died, to redeem us, to forgive us of our past, of our sins, and then to give us a new future. And so we actually have kind of a hidden gem in the very back of our book, Appendix A. It's not even a chapter. It's just this little hidden gold nugget in the back called Finding Freedom and Forgiveness from Past Sexual Sin. So if you're wrestling with that right now, if you're struggling, we also encourage you, grab a copy of Love Defined. You can even flip to the back. This walks you through the steps of forgiveness and just restoration, moving forward, how God views you, how he doesn't define your worth based on what you've done, but what Christ has done for you. So all in, we think this is going to be such a helpful read for you, and we encourage you to grab a copy, and we just hope this little discussion on boundaries has been helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, and if you want to see more from us, we post brand new videos every Wednesday, so you can subscribe to our channel below. And if you want to keep up with us on more of a regular basis, you can check out our blog at girldefined.com, where we keep new content, fresh content going throughout the week, so you can kind of get that to kind of fill in between the Wednesdays when you're like, I want more. So check it out, girldefined.com. Whoa! Oh gosh. Oh, Georgia. My grandparents are back there. My heart stopped as if I really flew off and fell. That was so scary. Post a lot of Okay. You have chocolate? Nope. She should be glad. I'm like, well, here's me. I didn't know what else I was going to do, so I stopped. The end. Okay, one of the things that has been honestly the most surprising about our ministry has been our YouTube channel, because we had no idea what a hot market there was, I don't know, on YouTube, and how there are just so many Christian women who are on YouTube looking for solid content, and there's stuff out there, but there just isn't as much. I'm not sure why.
Yeah. For Christian women specifically, especially young women who are really striving to live a countercultural life. And so we launched this YouTube channel having no idea how quickly it would grow. And so because of that, we want to continue producing this solid biblical content, because we see that there is an incredible need. And so we are asking you right there to partner with us and join with us in helping make this possible. And so if you want to head over to patreon.com, we'll link to our page below. It's just basically a way for you to come alongside us and support us with small financial donations to keep the Girl Defined,
$2,
yes, to keep the Girl Defined YouTube channel going. And so if you love what you're seeing, if you want to see this continue, click patreon.com down below, support us, because we need you.